And 2013 work session of the Riverton City Council to order at 7 p.m. Would Councilmember Christensen lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would the city clerk please conduct the roll call?
Yes, Your Honor. Councilman Todd Smith.
Here.
Councilman Jonathan Fabian.
Here.
Councilman Eric Heiser.
Here.
Councilwoman Mary Ellen Christensen.
Present.
Councilman John Lars Baker.
I'm here.
Mayor Ron Warpness.
And I am present. And it's my understanding that Councilman Guard will be a few minutes late. Is that correct? So we'll go ahead and pretend that he's here. I declare that we have a quorum at this time. The chair would entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Agenda item number 6 is the fall cleanup day discussion. City Administrator's report, please.
Yes, Your Honor. So we're here to talk about the fall cleanup. At our August 20th meeting, the council meeting, staff had told the council that we had received some inquiries from citizens wondering if we're going to have a fall cleanup, and staff suggested to the council that we do have a cleanup. And so staff is proposing having the fall cleanup on Saturday, October 19th from 8 a.m. to noon at 3 different locations in the city. The 3 locations would be the VFW, that'd be across the street from Smith's, City Hall, and the City Shop on Monroe. This would provide a variety of locations that would serve different parts of the city. Each location would be manned by a city employee, which accomplishes 2 goals. First, the citizens would be required to bring a recent utility bill that shows they are a resident of the city of Riverton. In discussions with some other staff, maybe even better than that, they have a bill and an ID. The idea would be that if someone got a hold of a bill and we don't check who it is, that could float around 8 or 9 times and people could come in and use that. It's just to prove residency. This is a program being sponsored by the city, and it should be for city residents. The second reason is the employee can monitor what is being dumped, so we don't have any things that shouldn't be into the dump stream. We've attached a draft flyer that could be used to advertise the event. Staff hopes to enlist other Boy Scouts, churches, any others that have trucks that would be willing to help people that are elderly or disabled in hauling some of their trash to the different locations. I did contact Set Free, and they're getting back with me as to if they would be interested in helping with that. Initially, they said it would be fine. They just had to check with their pastor. I also approached Andy Fry from the Solid Waste District, trying to see if there's a reason if we could get some sort of fee reduction or something, and he said there was no chance for that. He supported it personally, and he's talked to the board about it, but they just haven't moved on that. And what the other issue that probably we need to discuss is how many are we willing to fill up? Obviously, there's going to be a cost to the city for dumping these dumpsters, and I think initially what we're thinking about is having 2 dumpsters at each location, so that would be 6 dumpsters. Some people, or what I've seen in the past, is once those get full, then we're pretty much done, or you can keep bringing in more and more. The problem with that is we don't know the extent of what our tipping fees will be, and I don't know if we're that flush in the sanitation fund to go too far. So we'd probably want to have some sort of stipulations as to a dollar amount, or to say we've got 2 dumpsters at each one. It's 8 to noon, first come, first serve. Once they filled up, then we're done. But that's something to think about. some alternatives. We could haul everything to the alley and continue the past practice that we've done. We could offer different locations than what we have proposed. And we could have more or less locations if you felt like that was necessary. But that's what we're proposing is 3 different locations across the city. We believe that covers the south, the east, the north, and the west for different areas that people can dump at. And so that's the staff report. If there's any questions, this is a work session, so we don't have to make decisions, but maybe some direction to make sure that we're moving in the right direction and we can have a finalized advertisement, because we'd like to start advertising to the public so they can plan on this date and start saving their trash.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. I think that makes a lot of sense. I guess my inclination would be that as long as people are bringing their trash in that's going to end up in the garbage somewhere, that we may as well figure on taking it up and dealing with it. It's hard to know what it's going to be from a weight standpoint. It's my understanding that what we're thinking about here is mainly the larger items like old broken down sofas or something like that we're trying to get rid of.
The other thing we'd like to do in the advertisement is point out to people that there are other things that people can do with certain items that don't cost anything. They can haul it down to the baler, certain items, and they don't have to pay for them, or there's other businesses in town that will accept metal type things for no cost, or they'll actually pay you for those. And so we don't need to get into that, but I think some of it's just getting the education out to the public, 'cause some of them don't know that.
I think there's a lot of people that have things that to them it's junk, but when it gets out where the public can take advantage of it, why then it may not be so much junk. I remember when my in-laws in Worland had a sale, and after the sale, well, we ended up with a whole pile of stuff, and I just said, well, set it out beside the street and put a free sign on it. And my brother-in-law says, well, God, nobody wants that junk. I mean, so we went out to lunch after the sale, and when we came back, there was just a little bitty tiny box left. So, and for us to take everything and then have to pay for it, rather than try to figure out a way to get it into, back into the useful service of people, is a real challenge. So,
So,
I'm
Your
certainly
Honor?
not opposed to what you're suggesting. Yes, Councilman Baker.
So I do have a question. It seems like in the past, when we were able to just take stuff to the alley and leave it there, and the city came by and picked it up, that's one kind of a cleanup thing. I don't see that there's very much difference between loading your pickup truck and hauling it to the VFW and putting it in a city dumpster versus hauling it down to the baling station, except that what we're doing is we're letting people do that without going to the baling station and pay the tipping fee.
That's right.
Correct.
Okay, so the convenience, though, of taking the stuff to the alley and having the city come pick it up or clean it up is different. Okay, by having locations, just different locations in town where you could drop it off. And so what we're willing to do is to say, well, we're gonna have those locations. What would be? I'm just thinking, what would be different about just saying, okay, anybody with a city water bill that comes to the baling station with a load of junk on August the 19th can dump for free. And then we wouldn't have to put the dumpsters out, and then all we'd have to do is they just keep the scale tags, and city wouldn't be involved in it at all, other than writing a check to cover the tipping fees for that day. I mean, that might be one thing. The other thing that I've participated in a number of household hazardous waste collection days, pesticides, batteries, paint, that type of thing. And I can remember one year they did refrigerators and freezers that had Freon in them. And they actually had somebody contracted, to take the Freon out and render them safe for crushing and whatever, salvage for the metal. There's, kinds of things like that maybe that would make it possible for people who now have a freezer or an old refrigerator that they need to get rid of, okay, to make it easier for them to accomplish that. So I guess those are ideas that have kind of stuck in my mind. I just got a grant for the weed and pest. We got that grant from the Department of Agriculture this week for $3,500 for the disposal of waste pesticides. So if anybody has, pesticides left over, farm, household, chemicals, lawn spray, whatever that type of, that they would like to get rid of and out of the garage, they can bring that to the weed and pest, and we'll use this grant money to pay for the disposal there. But there are, so I guess just the thought of all those hazardous waste days that we had where people brought all kinds of stuff, okay, like people coming in with pesticide containers, okay, trying to drop them off at the pesticide bench and when they were full of motor oil, used motor oil, and so there was a lot of stuff that people wanted to get rid of, but they didn't want to, take it through the right channels to do it. So I'm just wondering if, we don't advertise really strongly about, the things that can be recycled and the fact that that's free, and then maybe you could have a free day at the baling station as a way to deal with that.
It's an interesting idea, Councilman Baker. Does
Yeah, Your
anyone
Honor,
else?
that's another alternative that can be added there. I mean, I'm trying to think if there would be any negatives to that, but,
Your Honor,
Yes.
I'd like to
Councilman Gard.
apologize for being late before I start, but Councilman Baker's correct in the fact that you only move it once. You don't have to put the dumpsters out. Is there any idea how much weight there's got to be some kind of average idea of what weight's coming across a 20-yard dumpster? Could we get some kind of feedback on that? I guess my question is, if you throw the doors open and you say that our funds are limited at that point, and it would be nice if there was a real run on the baling station. I don't think that's going to be the case. There's a lot of things happening that time of the year. But if we got some of that collected and picked up out of the alleys and dropped off, would be a real plus to us.
Mhm.
So has anybody thought to ask the county commissioners to go to I just went through the park, Yellowstone Park. I didn't know anything about it, but it was the free day and I didn't have to pay 2 weeks ago. And so, even the federal government makes a mistake once in a while and it quits collecting funds for a minute. And so I think Councilman Baker's got a good idea there.
yeah.
That if we'd open it up for a day and advertise that day, and then you don't have to throw it in a dumpster and then move the dumpster, that's just another move of the same garbage. So I think that's a really smart move. And maybe we could ask the commissioners how they feel about, a free day. It's not going to kill them. Maybe the answer is no, but maybe we could send a delegation, the mayor, to somebody to beg, crawl in there on his knees and say, this would be a good idea through all the communities. Du Bois,
Yeah.
Lander, everywhere could use that. So I realize it would be somewhat costly, and I would like to get a handle on what the cost really is, so it just doesn't go over the top.
Or perhaps we could just look at setting, we'll collect, everything that goes across the scale with a valid bill from 8 to noon on whatever day up to however much poundage, and when we hit that, then we're out. That way we can know our cost without.
Yeah, because it's really hard to know how much people are going to use it. And, I mean, you could have a line out all the way back for people backing up at 8 o'clock, you know, people camping out for the after Thanksgiving sale.
You could hope, but I don't think it'll be that
Yeah.
carried away. And I suppose that's why I want to know how much average weight we can put in a dumpster, and 6 dumpsters is, and how much money are we really talking about investing before we throw open the doors and say, come on in.
Yeah, because I think we're averaging, I know on our trash bill, but that's everything that's picked up, it's about 50,000 a month. It's 80? Oh, 55 to 80.
$5,500
Thousand.
$55,000 a month.
To 80,000.
And so,
Your Honor,
Yeah,
another question that I kind of have is the people who ask about the cleanup day, do they have any specific issues in mind? I guess I'm thinking that, say you were, cleaning up your property, limbs, trees, that type of thing, that would be actually free anyhow, because we'd take it and grind it, and, the yard waste stuff would be free. But if there may be lots of people in the community that don't have a trailer or a truck that would where they can haul that stuff away, and right now we're saying if it doesn't fit in the blue, yard waste container, they're not going to pick it up. But I noticed there was something in here about if the sticks were cut to 4 foot in length and bundled together or something, then there'd be some way to come around on the normal route and pick that kind of yard waste up on a special route to accomplish that. I think that might go a long way toward meeting that, and then not worry about old sofas and mattresses and that type of thing. Let people figure out how to take care of that themselves. That way we wouldn't incur any tipping fee. What we would incur is the cost of running the route a second time or a third time maybe to pick up all of that waste.
Yeah, and I think you're implying, Mayor, the tag system that we were talking about, that's the one we were talking about where you have an extra, if you want an extra pickup, you'd have to cut them to certain lengths, and then you'd buy a tag, and then,
Oh, that was in that next section.
that's in that next section, and so then people,
I kept reading this, I didn't see anything there, so.
yeah, so that, they would come by on a
Knew it
Friday
read
and
it.
pick those up, and,
I think that when we used to have the pickup, the convenience of having it in the alley, the convenience for the citizens, it wasn't convenient for the city. It was very inconvenient for the staff, I think, to go and do that. But I think we've got a lot of citizens out there that don't have pickups. They don't have any way to get a broken down sofa down to them. And if there was a number that they could call, to come and pick that up, then that would help resolve that. But I think just having a free day down there with the city picking up the bill and whatever it is, I think our chances of abuse would be increased significantly. Anyway, that's certainly an interesting idea. But if anything we can do to get garbage into the garbage stream, I think, is a step in the right direction. Yes, Councilman Gard.
if you divide that 55,000 by 30 days, it breaks down to $1,800 a day, $1,833 a day. And then we must be hauling about 45,800 pounds a day as an average, if that just breaks down to an average. Councilman Fabian shows me that we charge $245 for a 20-yard.
That was another company that does that.
Another
That wasn't
company.
ours.
But I guess what I'm coming around to, that's 9 dumpsters. That's 9 20-yard dumpsters. And so, do we have $1,800 in the fund?
yeah.
And so, I can't really see that you'd be that overwhelmed. That people would come and use the facility more than the dump trucks, more than the garbage trucks for one whole day. But I guess that's the gun you put to your head when you say come dump your trash for free. Do we have double that? Can we afford to double it? It'd sure be nice if you saw that much trash, but that's a whole lot of trash. That's 18 dumpsters.
Yeah, and I think, Your Honor, that a lot of the trash you're going to see is more the bigger, bulky stuff that you wouldn't normally see. It's not household trash. You're going to have more. I mean, you could have someone that comes through with a whole bunch of concrete that's all broken up and haul that, and that's at a poundage, trying to get rid of that. I mean, I got a bunch of that I could haul off. And I'm not trying to give people ideas, but that's the only issue, the downfall to it. When you open it up for free and you do it all day, you don't know what you're going to get. But you're right, we were talking about it today. If it was somewhere close to about $5,000, we'd be fine with it. We don't have any issues with that. If it goes over that, then we may have.
I think you would also lose control over what it is that you're dumping in there if you just have a free day down there. The individual that is at the scales, they're interested in, what it is from their perspective, but not from ours. And so.
You set some parameters, though, of what's going to be accepted, right? And
I
so-
suppose we could have one of our city staff down there to, help that person on that particular day to make sure that we're not buying something that we shouldn't be. Councilman Baker?
Your Honor, the last time I was there, they pretty well picked through my truck and said, take that over here and that over there and
Oh,
that
did
over
they?
there. Okay?
Well, that's
And
good.
then pay me $15, thank you.
Okay, well,
And part of the rationale, honestly, behind $80 a ton tipping fee is to minimize the garbage that goes into the landfill, not maximize it. And so they're really not interested in putting more garbage in the landfill. Which is why when we go to the solid waste district and ask them for a free day, they probably say,
Hard to fry.
I'm curious as to why e-waste is not allowed as well.
So costly.
It's really expensive.
Mayor, that tipping fee for the e-waste is 40 cents a pound,
Wow.
not 4 cents a pound.
10 times as much.
Looks to me like there's a business opportunity right there for someone. Okay, is there any other comments that anyone would like to make? Councilman Heiser? Nothing?
I think we pretty much got her covered.
Okay. All right, moving on. Agenda item number 7, weed cutting and spraying in alleys. City Administrator's report, please.
Okay, Your Honor. This is weed trash day. It's all the above. In August, staff brought to the attention of the council that city employees were cutting weeds on the sidewalks, and we had that discussion at our last council meeting. Staff recommended to follow the code and make all property owners responsible for their weeds up to the curb line of their property, and council agreed with that. It was also suggested by staff that we amend the code to clarify the maintenance of weeds to the center line of the alley. In talking to long-term public works staff, they've always told the residents that this is the case, that they are responsible for the weeds to the center line of the alley. Staff believes that the current code language is unclear when you read it, and it needs to be amended so that there's no question of the property owner's responsibility. It's been suggested that instead of property owners being responsible for the weeds, that maybe the city should do it, and staff has looked into that option, and we came up with a few of, I guess, concerns that we have related to that. The first one was, and it's been brought up in the past, with the current staff that we have trouble maintaining our own city properties in the current state that we're in. The other thing is we currently have a trailer that could be pulled that has the bars that go down that could spray in an alley, but the problem is it's set up to be pretty uniform in the width that it can spray at. And once you mix in dumpsters and all the other obstacles that you find in an alley, that would be very cumbersome to do. You'd be lifting up and then you'd be missing weeds. And so that, from that perspective, that one won't work. We felt the best way to do that is to actually have someone, and we do have a truck that someone could sit on the back of. It's got a seat, and you'd have to spray manually instead of having a bar. Staff believes that as soon as we start to spray, that we'll have a significant amount of complaints from citizens relating to killing their plants, trees, grass, flowers, gardens, anything. When you start spraying in an alley, and I've been down several alleys, some are pretty much all weeds. Others, there's some nicely manicured ones right up to the alley line where people have tulips grown and grass, and you start spraying around in there and you get a little drift in the wind, and then you've got all these complaints coming in that saying you've killed my tree, you've killed my garden, and we expect you to come and replace it all. The cost of the chemicals and manpower, we really did the math on this, and really the chemical part of it is really non-significant in what we determined the amount of spraying that we would have to do. We figured it would be under $500. The biggest cost would be the manpower. If you did it manually, we believe that would take a little bit of time to go up and down the alleys and spray those manually. And then just accepting more liability. And there's a quote in here from our city attorney when we were asking about weeds on properties, on intersections, if there's any liability issues. And he says the city certainly can take on the burden of clearing the weeds. However, if we start, then we have to take on the responsibility. And I think extended our liability in all weeds on sidewalks, areas where intersections or otherwise. I would think that we're better off to keep the burden on the property owners and send notices to persons that we become aware of. And so it's staff recommendation that we actually not add to the code, but clarify the code what we have been as past practice, and make it the property owner's responsibility to spray the weeds, maintain the alley up to the center line. That seems to be the fairest way to do it. Other alternatives you could look at is we maintain the weeds in the alleys. I mean, that could be one. Or we spray at the beginning, like one time in the spring, and then their responsibility to take care of it after that. So those are some different alternatives that we came up with. And so, what do you think?
Was there any discussion in there regarding the issue that Councilman Baker brought up about the possibility of the city providing a sprayer and having the chemicals so that if anyone wants to spray the weeds on their property, that they can come in for a very nominal fee, get it taken care of? Or is the feeling that that would be competing with private industry in town to do that, but then you need a pint of malathion or whatever it is, and you end up with a gallon. Has any discussion?
There was a little bit, and Councilman Christensen actually talked to a few of the people here in town if we're competing with them, and well, you can report on that.
Your Honor,
Councilman
the
Christensen.
issue with the local retailers that would have the ability to rent those.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is that you don't know what people are putting in them. The liability for them is horrible because God only knows what they're putting in the sprayers.
I see.
And if the next person, if you don't clean it correctly, the next person could put something
So
in
they don't
that's-
have much of a business there then?
No, and Casper does not either. So it's a huge liability. So if we start renting them, that could be an issue.
Well, and we did look at that, and then we thought, well, Lars is up there. He's renting them for a nominal charge, and I mean, we could duplicate that service, but I don't know if it would be. I guess the issue would be the amount of chemical that you wouldn't have to buy. When you go up to Lars, you have to buy 2.5 gallons or a gallon of it. That's going to take you 20 years to use. By then, it's expired, and you have to start over. But But
You get one of those pickup mounted sprayers, you know, they work great if you've got 2 acres of ground that you want to spray. But just to do a small, so. Anyway, just,
Your Honor,
yes,
the Weed and Pest District has some small sprayers, 50-gallon tank sprayers that, you know, are suitable for treating, say, up to a half or acre or maybe an acre. You know, if you work at it, you could do more than that with that
do you
sprayer.
have any of the backpack?
I do. I
kind of
have a
things?
backpack. You can, world class, the finest backpack manufactured in the world, Jacktoe, and you can rent it from me for $1 a day.
Whoa.
Okay, they're only $125 a piece. You can buy your own if you'd like to have one that bad, but you don't need to. You can borrow one from me. And while I know people have anxiety about the sprayer and what somebody had in it last, the reality is that doesn't ever seem to be a problem. We've been in the rental business for 30 years, and that doesn't ever seem to be a problem.
Okay. Would they have to buy a gallon of the weed killer then to?
Well, I don't sell lawn and garden products, so, but they can buy that at you know, Walmart or Kmart or Safeway or Martin Lumber or
In small quantities.
yeah,
is what
small
I'm getting at.
quantities,
Okay.
yeah, appropriate quantities.
Okay, well,
The
maybe
big
we don't-
challenge, you know, pesticide, this disposal grant that I have, the big challenge will be people that bought 2.5 gallons of 2,4-D 15 years ago, and Granddad passed away, and so then his kids come to clean out the garage so that they can sell the house, and here is it's not 2.5 gallons. He's actually used 3 tablespoons out of that 2.5 gallon jug, and now because the jug is open, it's not sellable. You know, and so you have to dispose of it because then you really don't know what's in the container anymore. It could be motor oil, and so what happens then is that comes back in, that goes to the incinerator. So it's you know, wasteful from that standpoint, and so most people in town are going to be much better off purchasing their products from you know, one of the local retail outlets for lawn and garden products, through Water Garden or whatever. Right? And I mean, there's lots of places that you can buy lawn and garden products in the community.
Your Honor,
Yes.
would it be practical, Lars, to have the city have a unit that only killed, that was filled with the proper mix by the city employees and rented out?
Can't do it.
Can't do that.
No. We used to do that. We used to, you know, if somebody has a few little weeds, we have a backpack. You come get the backpack, you get the jug of chemical, you take it home, spray your weeds, you bring the jug back, and it's sitting there next to the backpack. The next guy comes in, he takes the jug, he uses 2 ounces out of it. EPA says that's worth $10,000 every time you do it. So, no.
My thought was if it was already pre-mixed into a vehicle that the city owned,
Can't do it.
because of the
No.
multiple use.
Yeah, can't. No, the only way you could dispense a pesticide to the individual who's going to make the application, it has to be in a sealed container with an intact label, so that individual can read the label, understand what he's doing, and because he makes the ultimate decision and takes the responsibility of the application. Okay, so if I'm there, present at the site, and I can help the guy make the application, then that's my chemical in there. I'm there, then I bill him for that. But in order to operate under my license, I'd have to be present. And so the problem of mixing something up and then sending somebody out with the instructions to get it done, the EPA says, no, you can't do that. That's an illegal repackaging of the pesticide.
Could we then have a minimal fee charged, and the city, you could come into the city and say, I would pay what the fee is to have my property sprayed, and then have the city go out and spray it?
Or you could set that up. Yeah, you could have a guy in the city that went around and sprayed weeds for people, just like you could have somebody that mowed weeds for people.
I can't believe that there aren't people out there that already do that.
But there are people who do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So
that's not what we're-
but it's not at a it's not but it's not necessarily at a
Every day.
but it's those
Speak
people
up.
are trying to make money at it.
Well, and see, with that said, then we could, if we had some private sectors like Councilman Smith that says he'll spray weeds, then we could just use his fee schedule or pass out his cards and say, these are the 5 guys that'll spray weeds in the city, and we'd recommend that you get them sprayed. And we've covered that bridge.
I think backing up to our original thing of redefining the ordinance so that it's a little clearer that it's the citizens' responsibility to take care of their weeds on their property is where we should be going, and let the rest of it take care of itself.
And Your Honor, just a point of clarification, you can buy, at Sweetwater Garden, you can buy a small little spray bottle of pre-mixed weed killer up to gallon jugs. As little or as much as you want to buy, and go out there and spray the weeds in your alley for not very much money at all. So the product is available, a lot of places, but I buy a lot of weed killer at Sweetwater Garden, so.
Okay, sounds good. Kim will appreciate that plug.
I think the other thing that is in that discussion is we don't have, we have a chronic weed problem where we go out and have to service people that just refuse to do their weeds. And there is no, there's a large segment of people that when they get their notice, they go take care of what the problem is. I've got a weed notice myself before. Didn't get one this year, though. But with that said, if we could encourage that same method and then maybe combat our real weed problems before we have to mow them, can't we notify those? We probably got a pretty good idea who's going to cut their weeds and who doesn't, year in, year out. If we talk with Rosie, there may be a way that we could head off that problem before they were 6 feet tall.
Yeah, you'd have to get on them early.
And that may be another, maybe we could contract with the private sector to go do those units for us before they get.
Yeah, because right now I think it's set up, it has to be so many inches, so you're out there measuring, and the problem is once they get to a certain level, they just seem to grow like squash.
They grow like weeds.
Grow like weeds, yeah.
And that is a challenge that the city has in enforcement, is that you have to wait to a certain point before the person becomes, in violation. And so then you have due process where you have to notify them. You have to give them a certain amount of time to respond, and then you can take some kind of corrective action. By that time, we've moved from the point where the weeds might have been taken care of easily without having to remove any vegetation at all, to the point where the weeds are 3 feet tall, and now we're taking dumpsters away that are full of weeds off of that property, when earlier it would have been possible to take care of that and not have any of that waste to deal with, or any of that labor to be involved in the process.
Is there any way to shorten up that time period from when they're identified as being a problem to, shorten that up as the shortest time possible? But
How authoritarian do you want to be?
just want to get the weeds killed.
See, that's where the question comes in, and how much leeway do you want to give a person? I mean, sometimes somebody, are out of town, or they broke their leg, or, you know what I mean? And so then you say, well, we'll give you 2 weeks.
Yep.
Yeah, Your Honor, that could be a code change. I mean, you can change the amount of time. It's in code. We follow that. I mean, when we notify someone, we say,
Well,
I think it is 30 days. They have 30 days to do something, and then you check up on it. And once it's not done in 30 days,
that seems like that's more time than what a person should need, I would think. But
I think there's I can't remember. It seems to me like there's a public nuisance law that says that once the fire chief has declared the building to be a public nuisance, they've got 72 hours to rectify the problem, or the city could tear the building down and bill the owner. I think that's the way the Wyoming statute reads, not that anybody's ever done that.
Have you ever been involved in trying to do that?
For 38 years.
There you go. Well, and how successful have you been?
Not very.
That's exactly my experience. So anyway, is there any other things on weed cutting?
I guess, Your Honor, in ways of clarifying the ordinance, is there do people support that idea or not? Because if you do, then we can prepare an ordinance and bring it forward in front of the council at a regular meeting. I didn't want to prepare something and say no one's in support of it.
No, as a council, I certainly feel good about it.
Okay.
Okay. Number 8, tag system for extra sanitation collection. City Administrator's report.
Yes, Your Honor.
You're getting stuck with all these, Stephen. Can't
Yeah,
you
I-
delegate that out to anyone?
Yeah, well, this one I can't take any credit for. Dawn dreamed up, well, not dreamed up. I mean, she made up this whole system, and I give her a lot of credit because this is, I think that the system, we may have to tweak it a little bit, but I think the system in itself speaks for its. It would be a great program for people that are trying to get rid of stuff that they can't fit in their dumpster or in their trash can, and this way they would purchase a tag system, and I think as I've reviewed this and thought about it more, the price that we've proposed is a little low. It's $1.50 per tag. So if you want to get rid of your sofa, you're going to pay $4.50. That's pretty low. When you think of that, may cover the tipping costs, but then you've got the manpower and all. And I don't want to go too high on that because we want to encourage people to use this system, but at the same time, we already kind of subsidize in the sanitation fund with our recycling program. That's something that doesn't pay for itself, and so if we keep doing those, that's harder on the system as a whole. But I think this is a program overall that can really help to clean up the alleys or just junk on people's property, and so. The way it's set up is the residents purchase these tags and we're still trying to figure out how we do it. It would either be at City Hall or down at the Public Works shop. We're trying to avoid a whole bunch of extra duties for the gals up here, and then we're trying to figure out how we'd pay for it. And so we have a couple ideas that I'll share with you. So the work order would be generated, and then the citizen places the tag on these items, and then they call for a pickup, and these pickups would be done on Fridays. And so if they've ordered a tag and they say they got a mattress that needs to be picked up, they call on Friday, and then we'd schedule a time, and then the guys would go out and pick them up on Fridays. They'd put them at the front of their yard, not in the back, and then they could be picked up. They'd identify the number with the tag to verify that's the right one, pick it up, and then go dump it. And then Dawn has included a fairly detailed memo in here that I'm sure you've reviewed already. Staff believes this is a program that will be a win-win for the citizens and the city in helping to clean up the city. Instead of these items being left in the alleys that end up us picking up and not getting anything for it. So in some ways, it is a win-win when we get at least some amount of money to haul these things off to the dump. So if we went through that, if we go through the memo from Dawn, I think one thing that we've looked at is the cars. That may be something we may not want to get involved in. That's a pretty difficult process in signing titles over and notaries and all that. And I think there's systems already in place where the federal auto, they'll come and pick those up and actually pay you for it instead of you having to pay for something and having the city haul it off. So I think there's other avenues for people available with that. The other thing we thought about, instead of people coming and purchasing a fee at the window, paying $1.50 or $3, whatever the fee is, that we could add it on to their utility bill, and then that would be sent out with their utility bill, and you'd be added to that instead of, because if they go down to the public works shop and try to purchase these things, we have internal controls. There's one person up there at the front. Anytime you're dealing with money, you got to make sure you have some internal controls. So there's not that we don't trust our staff, but we really need to keep those internal controls in place. And so that would, then they could purchase those tags down at the public works shop. The work order would be generated. We could pull them up here. That could be added to their bill every month, and then they'd pay it along with their utility bill. And that would be a fairly easy process. And we're trying to make this as easy as possible for the citizens so they actually use it.
They would still pick up the tag, though. They would just pay through it. The billing would be. Okay.
Yeah, so they'd pick up the tag from the public works shop, and how many tags it is. If it's a large item, then it takes 3 tags. And then they would call for a time. They would schedule those. They'd go pick it up, and then it would show up on their bill the next month. The other thing is maybe just thinking about a different per tag fee. $1.50 to me is pretty low. We may want to consider a little bit higher, and I don't know what you would consider, because I figure someone's going to come by and take away a sofa that I can't get rid of. I think anywhere from $8 to $10 is pretty reasonable. I think you'd be pretty happy to have someone remove that off your hands for $8 or $10. But that's really a decision of the council in ways of how flexible you want to be, and we want to keep it minimal. But if we charge the full amount it costs us to do it, I think it would be out of line. It'd be too far up, and no one would use it. But if we go too low, we're not recouping enough, and then we're subsidizing it pretty heavily.
My only comment would be on that right now our citizens are paying through property tax mills. We're already paying for our solid waste, and there's some people that feel that paying on top of tipping fees is something that we shouldn't even have to be paying that. And then you've got the city garbage disposal fees that they have, and then we put something else on top of it. I'd like to keep it as low as possible, and I guess if we get a runaway, and it's just overloading the system to the point, then you might want to increase it a little bit. But I'm speaking, I'd like to keep it as low as possible. But.
Yeah, I agree, Your Honor. I wish we got some of that mill fees from the city, but they collect it all, and we don't.
And that's what I'm saying. If it's just something that it becomes such an onerous problem for us to pick up all this stuff, well then, but the way it is now, we have to pick it up anyway. Somebody throws a mattress beside a dumpster in the alley, and we end up picking it up for nothing. So, anyway, Councilman Baker.
Well, Your Honor, when I first got on council, I met with the recycling committee. Did they even meet? No, but at one time they were pretty active, and so one of the publications that I remember there was a lot of communities use. They call it pay as you throw, and so virtually all of the garbage that you throw away, it has to be in bags, in official bags, and so you would go to the city and purchase these 33-gallon trash bags, and those are the bags that you would use for your garbage. And so when you buy the bag, you have paid the disposal fee. So then if one week you needed to set out 2 bags, you could use 2 bags, and the next week you could set out 1 bag, or maybe you could get by for 2 or 3 weeks without setting out a bag at all. But then the only time that your trash got emptied or picked up was if it was in one of those bags. And so I guess I like this idea of the tags better than I do the free day at the dump. Having a particular cleanup day is because this addresses the people who actually have an issue. This addresses, and so the guy that doesn't have any extra trash doesn't pay anything extra. Okay, but the guy that does have extra trash pays to throw it away. But we've given them a method of doing that instead of just putting it out in the backyard and letting the mice live in it. And so in other words, even though it costs some extra money to do it, at the same time, it's easier than it is to, to take it down to the dump yourself. So I like the look of that, and the discussion here shows a yard waste bag, a paper bag for yard waste, and so you could, I assume that that's biodegradable, and so then you don't have a plastic bag in the pile that you have to worry about that isn't ever going to rot and go away. And so it looks to me like that would be an easy way to deal with the extra yard waste issues in the fall. You could go down and buy 4 bags or 6 bags or however many you needed, or a box of 10 or however they come, and the logistics of doing that, put it on the bill or whatever, okay, is, that can be worked out. But I like the idea of having some flexibility in the system that you're just not stuck with we got one of the smaller cans, a 45-gallon can, and that meets our needs virtually all the time, except when my grandkids show up. And on that week, I wind up saving the garbage in the garage until next week, when I can get the rest of it stuffed in the can.
Your Honor,
Yes, Councilman Gard.
this tag system has a couple other really virtuous values to it. Is that there's an arrangement made that I am going to put my garbage out on Friday, and somebody's going to get it on Friday, instead of the mattress staying in the alley until some charitable soul comes along, loads it up, puts the TV in, drives across the scales, and pays $40 for their effort. Okay, and so I think that has, and I think it's a good idea. We ought to try it. We ought to see if it works, see if we may have to modify it as we go. But at least you've come in and made arrangements. You're going to put something out at a certain time. Somebody's going to come and get it. Mayor's right that we probably ought to keep it as reasonable as possible so that it does catch on and can be used. I don't think people actually want to trash up their alley. They just don't have any other way to get those items to the dump, and they're hoping that the city will come through and note. I noted just today that there's a mattress thrown up against the cardboard collector behind Kusel's. And, somewhere along the line that reflects back on us as a city, and, a timely pickup to get that out of its way. And I realize it's going to cost, but, we ought to have a hotshot crew that looks around town and picks that stuff up, just because it's not going to go away. It's just going to get worse. But at least this is an idea that a responsible citizen could say, I really can't, no one wants this sofa. I can't get it to the dump myself, so I'll call and pay the price to get it removed.
I agree. I think it's an excellent idea personally, and I think Dawn should get some
Let's give her a
strokes for that. Yep, good job.
Take
Anyone
the rest
else?
of the night off.
Councilman Fabian.
The only other thing that that strikes me is that this seems like the type of system that could be set up to be accessed online pretty easily, and that might take out a whole lot of staff time as far as processing of the tags. Obviously, if the post
On our
office
website,
can,
something like that.
yeah, if the post office can sell stamps online, I'm sure we can figure out how to sell these tags online. And not everyone will want to access them that way, but the people who do, it saves us man hours on the front end. So
You can print your own tickets to the University of Wyoming game.
there you go. See, put them on StubHub.
I would agree with Councilman Baker as well. I think this is probably the better way to go than looking at a community cleanup day. I think this is the more efficient way to use staff's time, and I think that way we're not pulling them out on a Saturday, paying overtime hours, things of that nature. I think it's already working nationally. I think it's Home Depot sells bags big old bags for waste management. You go in there, you pay $100 for the bag, fill it up, then you call who I think it's waste management, and then they come pick it up. Whatever you can get in that bag, they'll pick up. So I think this is a great spin on that, and I think it's got a lot of potential. So.
Okay, any other comments?
Your Honor, so I hear some people saying they don't want to do the cleanup, or are we still planning to do the cleanup this year? I don't.
Well, it's going to take a little time to get this in place, isn't it?
Yeah.
This tag system in
I just
place
didn't-
is my
I
understanding.
didn't want to
So,
back off on it, or.
so it would make sense to me to go ahead with the plans that we had with the dumpsters at the 3 locations for this year, and then get this in place. And or if you feel that we can get it in place quick enough, to take the place of it, then we may not want to do that. But I don't have any feel for how long that will take to get it in place. Do you have any idea, Don? Or?
Yeah, I thought the 45-gallon garbage cans were a fantastic idea. Would it take a year and a half before we finally figured out how to bill people for them and get the cans and all that kind of stuff? It didn't happen overnight.
Yeah. And yet the labels on the recycling things, they came out real quick and were in place, and so yes.
I was going to say, Your Honor, with the 45 gallons, we have a lot of those left over. So if people are interested in moving from the 90 to 45, please let us know, because we purchased quite a few of those. And I think the encouragement is to try to get more into recycling and less into trash. And you can do that if you do recycle. You don't. I have a family of 6, and we had a 45-gallon with diapers and all that stuff, and our recycle bin was full, overflowing. And so it's something that you can do. Most things are recyclable. It's just it's a convenience factor. Do you want 6 bins out in your garage? So I've resorted to putting it all into one and taking it to Smith's myself, because then I don't have to have 6 different bins and remember which week to put it out. But that's what works for me, and it works for different people.
Okay, agenda item number 9, solar power discussion, city administrator's report.
All right. Okay, so the mayor and I went on a little trip to Jackson on July 23rd, 2013. And we met up with Mayor Mark Barron and the Public Works Director Larry Pardee to see how they were implementing solar energy as a viable option for power. And they are really excited to talk about it. I mean, I've never seen so many people excited about trying to be efficient and try to get more off the grid and making their own power. It was apparent to me from the very beginning that the mindset and culture of Jackson is sustainability. One of the first items that Mayor Barron pointed out to us when we got to City Hall was they installed a new drinking fountain, and they had a little device that stuck up out of the drinking fountain that you could fill up water bottles with instead of providing plastic bottles. And that's really has nothing to do with solar, but I'm trying to set the stage for everything that they do in Jackson. City Hall was an older building. However, they had renovated it to maximize the use of natural lights and energy consumption by replacing windows and sealing up the building. When we sat in the mayor's office, all the lights were out, but there was enough light coming in from the natural light to be sufficient. City Hall was the first building that we looked at, and it had solar panels on the back side. And it really, you couldn't tell. I mean, it was there, but it was done properly. They blended in fairly well. Included in the packet that you have, there's a couple of tables and explanations of all the projects that they have done with solar power to decrease their demand on the power grid. And it's not only just electricity that they're focusing on, it's also gasoline usage, natural gas, and then kilowatts. according to their some of their data, they have saved about $466,567 over the course of, since I think they started this in 2007. Their biggest saving in gasoline was their police department. They installed an extra battery in their cars so they don't have to idle all the time. Because a lot of police cars are idling all the time, or sitting outside, sitting on the side, and they're idling because they have all this equipment that they run inside of there, and so they have this backup battery that's used, and so that's significantly decreased their fuel bill. We also visited the bus shelter restrooms, which is kind of a new building, and at first I couldn't even tell where they were at because they'd blended the panels in so well. We also looked at a downtown restroom, which I included some pictures at the bottom of the staff report. This is right in their downtown, and it's a fairly large building for a restroom. They're also going to be using it for art displays later on. We visited the wastewater treatment plant and the water treatment plant. All of these have solar panels as a supplemental use of power. The largest use of the solar panel was the sewer treatment plant, where they had a whole field of solar panels. It was amazing. They had just this whole section of... one thing that I did find interesting in visiting with some of the employees there is that they breathe, drink, and eat solar panel. I mean, it's solar energy or efficiency, trying to cut down on their usage. And while we were there, the sewer treatment plant operator was explaining to the mayor this new new process for treating water in a lagoon system, where he transferred water from 1 to 5 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it was going to reduce their consumption by 20%, I believe, in electricity. And there was high fives going on all around and so they were pretty excited. The downtown restroom facility. This was a LEED certified building, so their heating and air conditioning was accomplished by thermal energy. The lights adjusted based on how much light was coming into the building. All the urinals were low or no flush with water. The water from the roof was collected in a tank that was used to water the plants around that building, and then once that overflowed, it trickled down into the aquifers to recharge it. All of these projects were made possible because of grants. As you can see on one of the tables, it shows that all their projects have totaled $1.5 million, of which 62.47% of it were funded by grants, and 37.53% was funded by the city. In most cases, solar energy with the current cost doesn't pay for itself, but with grants, it has made it possible. Some of theirs were ERA fundings, and those were 100% paid for by the federal government. The other part of the solar discussion relates to the price you save by having solar panels. And this is something I had quite a long discussion with Larry Elcock from Rocky Mountain Power. And he kind of clarified a few of my misassumptions. Is that a word, misassumptions? I thought that, if we were paying a kilowatt hour price of 7.5 cents per kilowatt, that we'd actually save that amount if we actually put a solar panel up. And he corrected me to say that's not correct. There's a lot of other charges involved in that kilowatt hour. The actual price for the actual usage would actually be 3.7 cents if you use solar power. In addition, he said, according to state law, you can only have up to 25 kilowatt per meter, so you can't go over that amount. So if we wanted to convert to powering our whole sewer treatment plant with solar energy, we wouldn't be able to do it because we'd be over that 25 kilowatt. As you can see from the spreadsheet, Jackson has stated that it's saving anywhere from 4 to 6 cents a kilowatt hour. The lower the numbers it's harder to justify because of the payback. You have to pay up those upfront costs, and then you have to pencil it out to see if it's going to pay back over the course of 20 years. They used 20 years because that's actually the warranty of those panels were 20 years. One of the one of the things they told us is they use the company in Lander. Most of their solar projects have been built by the Creative Energies out of Lander. So we're bringing this up more of a point just to give it an education, to bring it to the forefront of people's minds, that as we look at projects or renovating or if grant opportunities come forward, that we keep that in the front of our mind and using solar panel power as a viable option. Obviously, it has to pencil out, otherwise it doesn't work. I think in Jackson's case, sometimes they would maybe do it just because they think it's the right thing to do, even if it costs them a little bit more. But I think that's about it, unless the mayor has any more comments to share, since it was both of us
I was
going
just
there.
impressed, as you pointed out, the attitude and the culture there was, what can we do to save?
Yeah.
And it didn't have to do necessarily with electricity or water or anything. I mean, it's just across the board. It's just an attitude that they're promulgating throughout their organization, and I think it's very worthwhile for us to try to emulate that if at all possible. I was just very impressed with what they were doing. When I asked Mayor Barron how much of the electricity does the panels provide, I was expecting 20, 30, 40%, something like this. And he came up with, oh no, it's about 2 or 3%. And on the one chart that you have there, it's just that little glitch along the bottom of the chart is what they're generating in solar power. The rest of it is the grid power that's available. And so it's a very small amount, but over time, it's generating it whether you're using it or needing it or not. And then the power company is able to buy that back. And so we would go to one facility and they say, well, I think we're making power on this one, and this one it's costing us a little bit. And, so it's not a black and white deal, but I think the attitude, and then as a municipality able to get grants that are not available, for the general public, I think we would be remiss if we didn't try to take advantage of them where you have the technology. The other thing is that you're talking about the solar panels have a 20-year lifespan or warranty on them. You've got a huge amount of infrastructure, switchings and all sorts of relays and whatnot in the building. And the panel just happens to be setting out in the world that you see. But in the basement of these buildings, I mean, they've got a lot going on that costs a lot of money too. And I'm sure that the lifespan of those being protected from the environment and whatnot is a lot longer than 20 years. So it's kind of like that electric motor we just replaced was put in 1953 or something, and it's just now cratered on us. So I was just real excited about the possibility that we have when we have a sewer treatment plant down here that consumes the amount of electricity it does, and we've got a landfill area that we can't put anything on top of, but accepted use for that would be a solar collector arrays. And so it's, to me, we're foolish not to be taking advantage of that if we can. So given the amount of money that we're spending on electricity here at the city, I've used the figure of 500,000, and I think that's fairly close. Is that so? That's a lot of money to be spending on electricity, and I don't see any indication that those rates are going to be going down in the future. I think they're going to continue to go right on up. So it was interesting. It was fun. I enjoyed it a lot, and but.
Did you guys get to eat at Bubba's?
No.
I can't remember which one we ate at.
But they bought, so we're.
Somebody better go with you too.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns about that?
Your Honor.
Yes.
I guess one thing I'd
Councilman
like to see or know more information on how much the the solar panels would cost to replace, how much of that was infrastructure, how much of it was solar panels to replace after 20 years, at their current savings. Their out of pocket on one of these pages was $579,700. They're going to be 9 to 10 years before they recoup just that, half of their lifespan. And over 20 years, that's only a $1.3 million in savings, and they spent 1.5. And whether or not they could get grants for more solar panels or how much is, penciling it out, it doesn't make a lot of financial sense in the interim unless you're investing a lot in the infrastructure and the panels are really cheap to replace in the 20-year lifespan. So, that'd be something to break down those numbers on how much was
I think
they think they'll have to replace in 20 years.
Sure, I think it would be worthwhile, and they offered to come down and visit with the council, and give a presentation on it at our WHAM convention that we had. I think it was in Cheyenne. Mayor Barron gave a presentation regarding that, and I don't think any of us disagree with that, Councilman Smith. We don't want to spend money we don't have on things that aren't going to pay out, and I think that's what Stephen was talking about, to make sure that it pencils out. But if you can get a grant that'll pay for 40-50% of it, and you don't, so it's all right. Grants are good. The only way we're going to get state money back here. So, okay. Any other comments?
Your Honor,
Councilman Baker?
just that I do see a lot of people doing this. There are some communities in the United States that have really gone gung-ho on this, and what impresses me is that the sun shines in Riverton 320 days a year.
That's right.
And good heavens, I was up in western Montana last week, and there's solar panels attached to practically everything up there, and the sun never shines. And so I can't imagine that they are making anything off of those, getting any kind of gain at all. And yet the idea that they're saving some money or possibly actually making something work, an electrical appliance of some kind work that they wouldn't have otherwise because they don't have connection to the grid.
Yes.
And so, you see a lot of that in cabins and out in the country, wells, stock wells, fences, electric fences, where the batteries are kept charged with solar panels.
See them along the highway for the telephones.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So our lights, flashing lights, and that tie warning signals. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity there, especially with new construction, because you may be able to downsize the amount of electrical that you have to supply to the building if you used your head about the way you put the building together. So,
Yes.
if you faced the building to the south and had a lot of glass on the south side of the building, so you had some passive solar gain, then you don't need as much heat in the building as if you turned the building 180 degrees and had those windows facing north.
Mm-hmm.
Your Honor,
Yes, Councilman Gard.
I once was in Hawaii, and courtesy of a good friend, and we spoke to a gentleman while we were there, and he installed a solar water heater. And what he learned to do was to bathe in cold water. So there's a lesson in a lot of things.
I spent 15 months in Vietnam learning that fact. So, anyway, okay. Agenda item number 10, Business Ready Community BRC grant applications. City Administrator's report, please.
Yes, Your Honor, you're probably sick of me talking. The reason we put these applications on here to be just to get an update or more of an overview of the 3 different business ready community grants that we have that are coming up at the council meeting next week. And we're going to have public hearings on those, and we'll be adopting resolutions and agreements. And so we felt it would be necessary to bring Phil Christopherson and the IDEA board, some of the board members that are here. I guess there's only 2 of them. Well, I'm a board member too, but so we thought we'd have them come and just give some overviews on these 3 different projects and see if there's any questions. So you can be thinking about those before we have the public hearing next week. So I'll turn that over to Phil.
Mr. Mayor, council members, it's good to be here with you today. We've discussed some of these grants in the past, and I just want to bring you up to date with where they're at. We've submitted 3 different applications for 2 separate projects. Which would you like to discuss first?
Surprises.
Let's talk about the pitch engine. Jason Kinsler, who's the owner and creator of Pitch Engine, is here to answer any questions that you have of him. But for Pitch Engine, we are proposing 2 separate business-ready community grants. One is a managed data center grant. The other is a business-committed grant. The managed data center grant would help Pitch Engine to create a data center in Fremont County. The location of that would be in the Riverton area somewhere, because Riverton has dual redundant fiber coming into it. It's one of the few locations in the county that has that, and that is an absolute requirement for a data center. So it would be in the Riverton area somewhere. I know that Jason is talking with different entities to find a place to locate that. So that'd be a $2.5 million grant. The way that would work, with a 125% match. All of the match would be provided by Pitch Engine based on their employment and the capital investment that they put into their equipment. So the way it would work is the state of Wyoming would reimburse Pitch Engine for their electrical expenses and their broadband expenses. For example, at home you have an electricity bill, and if you get cable TV or internet service, you have a bill for that. And you may pay $100 a month or $200 a month. Well, a data center in electricity bills and broadband can pay anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 a month up to $100,000 a month for each one. They can be very expensive costs because of the amount of energy, the amount of broadband that they use is expensive. So in order to encourage data centers to be built in the state, the legislature and the Wyoming Business Council passed the managed data center grant. And what it does is it reimburses up to 50% of those costs on a quarterly basis, as long as the business matches those costs with increased employment and capital expenditures. So that's the way that would work. So that grant would stretch over about a 3-year period of time. And in that 3 years, they would be reimbursed for up to $2.5 million worth of costs. That's grant number 1. Grant number 2, it would be a business-ready community grant associated with that project. We either need to build them a building or repurpose an existing facility so that they can move into that. So that we haven't settled on a place. We're looking at one place pretty strongly right now. Once that's a little bit further down the line, we'll be able to identify that and let you know where it's at. We don't know the value of that because we don't know exactly what needs to be done, but it could be up to $1.5 million. Again, Pitch Engine would be responsible for the 10% match for that. The whole impetus behind that is bring more jobs, more technology jobs to Riverton, actually to Fremont County. One of the real advantages of these grants, especially a data center in central Wyoming, right now there are quite a few data centers headed towards Wyoming, but they're all headed to Cheyenne. There's Microsoft down there, there's NCAR, there's a couple other Greenhouse Data, but they're all in that area. And nobody looks past the southeast corner of the state. If we can get this established and going, what it does is it lets people look that, hey, central Wyoming can host one of these. Maybe we should look at central Wyoming or other parts of Wyoming. So it has the potential to open up the entire state to high technology businesses. So that's kind of why we're really excited about this and pushing this forward. Any questions? Any questions for Jason? He came all this way.
Well, it sounds like an exciting opportunity for the city. It really
Next
is.
week will be the public hearing on this. In front of you will be actually be 2 public hearings, one for each grant. There will be 2 resolutions, one for each grant. And then we have 1 contingency development agreement that will spell out what City of Riverton will do, what Idea Inc. will do, and what Pitch Engine will do. And so that'll be in front of you. We'll be asking you to authorize the mayor to sign that. So, and all of you should have a copy of that in advance.
Yes. Step up to the microphone if you would, please. Identify yourself for the record, Mike.
Mayor and council, I just wondered how big a facility you might need for this.
That's a little bit open-ended. It depends on how big we want to scale it. Since we're only planning on sort of going for these grant opportunities once, it makes a lot of sense to sort of shoot for that sort of what we call a tier 2 data center. So we're talking 30,000 square feet, maybe above. We're currently, by the way, located in 7,000 square feet in Lander, and then we also have a County 10 office over here that's fairly new. So, you know, it's big picture wise, we really want to bring, you know, we've already developing those jobs and those skill sets here in Fremont County that otherwise didn't exist at all. And so we're really trying to cultivate that and grow that, and this will give us a great platform to sort of, you know, start that in a big way. We have 12 employees currently, so they would be coming into Riverton.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Within the 3-year period of time, Pitchin is committing to creating, I believe it's at least 37 very high-paid jobs. And data center, people who work in a data center are very high-paid, at least 2.5 times what the county mean is right now. So these are very good jobs, things that most of your kids would say, well, that's the kind of job I want. So.
Okay.
Any other questions? That's 2 grants there. They're 2 grants for the same project. And the Business Council requires that we do that, submit 2 grants at the same time for the project.
I actually have one quick question. Did I see that you're going to be on the TEDx at CWC coming up? Okay.
And Jason's been on TED before.
Okay.
You have, how many times? Second. Okay. And that'll be a really good event. That'll be a really good, October 5th, is it? I think that's what it is, but that's a Wednesday night at 5:30, it'd be a great event. Thank you, Ernie. Okay. The second grant that we're seeking is based on developing a business park in Riverton that would be 302 acres. About a year ago at the legislative session, Senator Bebout sponsored Senate File 90, which directed certain state agencies to go out and identify property that they considered surplus and then make that available for private purchase. Basically move public lands into private hands so it can be developed and used for money-making purposes. Right now, public lands are not on the tax rolls. They don't pay property tax. So his motivation was to get public lands into private hands. Idea Inc. kind of followed this along and watched this and kind of hoped that the section between Walmart and the Honor Farm Road would be included in that. In anticipation that it might be included in that, we submitted an application to the Business Council as a business committee grant to purchase that if it comes available. The report came out this week and it was included. The report is the 2013 Senate Enrolled Act number 85. There's a report that identifies lands all around the state, of which this Honor Farm property is part of it. There is a lot of land around the state that is going to go up for auction here in the next couple of years, probably in the next couple of months, that is going to move from public hands into private hands. So in anticipation of that, Idea Inc. decided that we'd submit the grant application. Right now, we don't know how much we're asking for because the value of the land will be established through an appraisal. which has not yet occurred. Once the appraisal is done on this land, then Idea Inc. intends to make a bid for whatever the value of the appraisal is. Now, this will be a public auction, so anybody else and everybody else can make a bid. You know, I don't know what the value of that land is. It's 302 acres. It's got some highway frontage. It's got development on one side, has the Honor Farm on the other side. Right in the middle of it is the Modelers Park. So Idea Inc. has really kind of two goals behind this. One is we want to see that land in private hands. If we don't end up with it, we're happy with that. We just want to see it in a developer's hands who can do something to help the city of Riverton grow and expand. So if we don't end up with it, we're not going to feel bad. If we do end up with it, we want to work closely with the city, primarily for two reasons. We want to have a site plan for the whole thing so that we know where future development's going to go. So we know how the streets are going to be laid out, what types of businesses are going to be in there, if there's going to be housing, where it's going to be. And we're concerned about the Modelers Park. We care about the Modelers Park. Idea Inc. has been involved with them from their very beginning, and we want to see that preserved in some way because that is an important thing to the community. The Modelers Park brings in people from around the state and from around the region, and we feel it's important to preserve that. But there's no guarantee that we will be the highest bidder on this auction. The time frame is such that by October 1st, this report will have been delivered to the SLIB board, who will then make an evaluation and a final determination on these lands. And then what they will do is direct the directors to get an appraisal and open it up for auction. And so when it goes to auction, we intend to place a bid, assuming we're successful in the grant application. Any questions?
Is the Modelers Park included in that 300 acres?
Yes, it is. The report specifically outlines all of the different areas, and in that section, it identifies that there's an area that's leased to the Modelers Park for $1 a year and talks about that. So that is identified within that parcel.
Mm-hmm. Any questions?
How soon do you anticipate that going out to bid?
Based on other similar types of things that the state has done, in Gillette, in Campbell County, there was a parcel of land, 600 and some acres, that went up for bid. Once it was appraised, within about 3 months it was sold. So it was a pretty rapid process, pretty quick turnaround. So as soon as we know the value of the appraisal, we'll know the value of the grant that we're asking for. So until that point, the Business Council is being patient with us, so we ask you to be patient as well. Next week, we'll have a public hearing on this. We'll have a resolution in support of it, asking you to pass that, and a development contingency agreement between Idea Inc. and the city that outlines each of our responsibilities.
Just for those that aren't familiar with this piece of ground, that's what we described as the land swap for years around here. And so.
That's true, but there is no swap. This is a straight out land purchase.
Thank goodness.
By anybody. It's open, the auction will be open to anybody. I imagine they'll qualify the bidders.
Yes.
But it's open to anybody.
Yes. But just for a point of reference, that's the same piece of ground.
Well, actually, if I recall, the land swap was about 10 acres, wasn't it, or 20 acres?
Yeah, it wasn't nearly as deep as that.
This is the entire 302 acre parcel. The report is available from the state of Wyoming. I know Stephen has a copy of it and could probably make it available to anybody who wants it, so you could look at all of the state lands. One thing to look at is the state hospital over in Lander has a lot of lands identified as surplus.
Are you able to just bid on a portion of this? Or do you have to bid on?
I believe you bid on the whole thing.
The whole thing, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there any questions anyone has?
Your Honor.
Councilman Garden.
When will the appraisal be done?
Pardon?
When will the appraisal be done?
Don't know. It'll be sometime after October 1st, because that's when the SLIB will provide their direction to include this and get the appraisal done. So this grant will go in front of the Business Council Board of Directors in December.
After you know the cost of that appraisal.
Yep.
Okay.
And if they don't appraise it by then, there will be a lot of lands being appraised. I don't know what priority they're gonna place on this. If this is, not appraised until February, then we will just push off the application until such time as it is.
Is there a chance that the value would be higher than you want to borrow?
There is that chance. We are, we have a dollar mind. We know how much we can afford and what we can qualify for matching funds. This grant is a 15% match. We have to come up with 15% of whatever amount we come up with. So we know how deep our pockets are and what we can afford and what the bank will lend us.
Is the state required by statute to sell this if the price is met?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. If they don't,
They will set a floor?
the floor will be the appraisal. From my understanding.
Has to hit the appraisal to sell?
Yeah, the floor will be the appraised value. That is my understanding. Once they have it appraised and the rules are better developed, we'll know for sure. But my understanding is that the appraisal is the floor, the lowest they'll accept.
Well, that'll be great to get that piece of ground into the private hands so that we can get some development out there. I think that's great. I think IDEA needs to be commended for your efforts in that area, and I just hope that the public is, paying attention to what's going on, and if there are developers out there that are interested in that piece of ground, why.
And whoever ends up getting the land, whether it's IDEA or somebody else, we really want them to work with the city to develop that into
Absolutely.
a nice business park. If you look at the east side of Casper and what the McMurrays have done in that area, they took a bunch of waste land, put a street down the middle of it, then put development off to the side, and it's just a great business park with a lot of development there. Something similar could be done here, and we hope whoever does get that does a similar thing. That's IDEA Inc.'s intention to do if we're successful. Plus, we want to be able to preserve the Modelers Park. We feel that's an important aspect of the community, and we want to make sure that is continues in some form.
Your Honor.
Yeah, Councilman Hyder.
Phil, is there, I know we talked last time around, and I haven't read that. We got the email a couple of weeks ago about all the lands around, but the idea is for them to move from public to private for the idea of development. We had talked about something when we were looking to move it to private hands before, that if we were able to get rid of it, we were going to put a timeline on it so that you just couldn't buy it and sit on the land. Do you know if there's any kind of provision on that?
I do not know. No.
Okay. That might be something to talk to Eli about, because I'm not sure if that was in there or not, but it would be a shame to, it defeats the purpose. If a private developer is going to hold on to it, the state just as well keep it. I mean, if nothing's going to happen, and they're just going to sit there and want, absorbent amounts of money for way more than what the market's going to bear, then it does us no good. So.
I agree. That's not up to me. I'll just follow the rules that they come up with. Although I do suspect that if somebody's going to put out $3 or $4 million for a piece of land, they're probably not just going to sit on it. But if somebody has that much spare cash laying around, maybe they will.
Jackson won't buy it, will he?
Your Honor?
Yes. Councilman
I just wanted to bring up on the finance part of it, because initially this was a concern to the city of when you add up the total of these three projects, you could somewhere be up at $7 million. And these are grants, but the city, at the current state that we're doing it, we have to float that money, which would be a concern. But apparently through the Wyoming Business Council, you can write something into the contract with these that the monies will only, once you get, the contractor would have to be aware of this because it would be a little bit of a time lapse. They would submit the payment, then we could sit on that until we got the money from Wyoming Business Council, and it was paid to us, and then we can pay the contractor instead of having to float some of that money. Because initially, if we had to float some of that money of $7 million, Courtney's hair would be standing straight up, and that wouldn't work for us. We with the water project and all the different projects we have going on, we don't feel confident that we could do that amount of money.
Yes.
And so this is good to hear that we have another option. We'll just have to make sure in the contract that it's stated to that, so the developer would know that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weaver. Appreciate that. Any other comments?
Your Honor,
Yes.
one question for
Christensen.
Phil. Going back to Eric's question, say Idea Inc. does get that piece of land, would you have a stipulation about the length of time?
Your Honor, council member, yeah, we would like to see it developed as quickly as possible. We would work hand in hand with city. I think the first thing to do would be to develop an overall plan for the area. I don't know what that area is in the city's master plan, but it needs to be included, and then develop an idea of what could go there and how it would go. And so, but we would like to see it developed and turned over to developers as rapidly as possible.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Phil. Okay, if there's no other business, got one other thing. Tomorrow, we're having the Command Sergeant Major Kevin Griffin Memorial Dedication, and I encourage everyone to come to the Veterans Park in back of City Hall here at 12 noon. It should be a great event honoring Command Sergeant Kevin Griffin. So the governor is going to be here, and other dignitaries, so if you can come, well, we really encourage you to do so. Okay, I think with that, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Your Honor, I'd make a motion.
In a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.